Hi, this is Colleen with Chats with Colleen, and we're so glad that you're here joining us for our biweekly podcast edition. This week's episode is with Eliot Grimm with VE Builders. He is a general contractor in the Central Florida area, and he is also a great person. Not only that, however, he is going to explain to us about renovation nightmares, permitting nightmares, and just things that simple homeowners do to maybe possibly cut corners and why it's not always the best to get things done cheaply because it could backfire in the end. He's going to talk about the importance of getting stuff done correctly, getting permits, and just explain some things that he's seen happen and some things that people have done that he's been a part of and have to repair and clean up. So it's very informative. He's very knowledgeable, and he's also very recommended in the Central Florida area for home renovations, home builds, etc. So please be sure to listen, like and share, subscribe. And if you want to join our podcast, please let us know. We are booking for all of 2026. It can be done via Zoom. And it can also be done live in person in Lake Mary, Florida. We so appreciate you. And also, this is our first podcast of 2026. So happy New Year to everybody. Best wishes. Stay well, be healthy, and enjoy the show. Thank you. Hi, this is Colleen with Chats with Colleen, and we're so glad that you're here joining us today. Today, I have Eliot Grimm, who's the owner of VE Builders, with me. Thanks for taking your time on this Monday afternoon to share some of your insight and your expertise with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So, we're going to talk about home renovations and home renovation nightmares. So, with that being said, I'm sure you have a lot because I see your posts and stuff. But what is the one of the worst home renovations nightmares that you've ever participated in?
Well, there's a lot to choose from, like you said. We had a house in Sanford that it had asbestos on the floor. It had a terrible pet smell. The
Oh,
bathroom was built on a wooden deck. It wasn't even a concrete floor. They had just taken some two by fours and laid them in the dirt. That one was pretty rough and definitely was a
oh
scenario
my
where
God.
the owner did not take any diligence, just kind of bought the property as is, and the walls were also concrete, so they took a lot of extra work because you couldn't rewire the house without putting a bunch of furring strips and insulation up.
Ooh.
We had a client bought a house in Winter Park that had a fire damaged attic, like
Oh.
bad, like a lightning, probably a lightning strike. We don't know, but that one was quite pricey as well. Opened the hatch of the attic, and it was completely burnt out up there. And randomly, it didn't smell like fire in the house, but it definitely was fire damage. There was substantial fire damage in the attic.
So they weren't aware of that before they purchased it?
As
Oh.
is,
Oh, there you go. Okay. So it's you got to do an inspection, but if it looks good on the outside, they're probably saying, how could it be
it
burnt? Oh,
it
wow.
it didn't smell. It was really weird. Usually, a burnt house has an overwhelming smell. That's really hard to hide, but for I guess it had been long enough or whatever, and it just it didn't have that burnt smell. But it took thousands of dollars to repair just the attic.
God, and they weren't expecting that. Wow. So you've basically seen a little bit of everything.
I
Have you
have.
ever have you ever seen a hoarder house?
Yep, we've done several hoarder houses. They're very hard to manage the time frame on and the budget on how to get everything out of there because it's so hard to tell what you're going to dig into, and it's very hard to get stuff out because they don't keep hoarders typically keep everything very individualized. There's not boxes or anything, so
Mhm.
it's just very time consuming to get the material out because you're picking like little tiny things up and putting them in trash cans. And we have some tricks to the trade where we to like put trash cans on wheels and just somebody's just basically loading trash cans and then somebody's unloading them at the other end. But it's not like emptying a normal house where you have like a couch and a chair and a TV. You know, you don't have that. Everything's just small stuff.
And it's all like stacked up on top
It's
of each
just
other.
stacked. Yeah, you like the first 3 days, you don't feel like you're getting anything done.
I bet.
You can barely get through a living room if it's bad enough.
Oh God. And then it's just always shocking to me how like somebody lives there, they were living in that.
Mhm.
It's really sad. Have you ever had to step in like in a project to rescue
Absolutely, all the time. What we usually see is a lot of demo got done. They buy materials. Typically, the materials are purchased, but they're not the right materials for the project. So you'll go in and there's like they just kind of go to Home Depot or Lowe's and they just grab like random things, but they're not really what you need for the first step of the project. So
Oh,
I can immediately tell like there's like a sheet of drywall and like a couple of boards, and there's always like a ladder. If for some reason they always buy a ladder, and so you walk in and there's like a ladder and a couple um, sheets of drywall and like a couple of pieces of wood. It's like they almost just kind of grab whatever they can, but it's not the first thing that you really need to finish the project. So it creates, I can just tell by looking nowadays that it's something they're basically just putting materials on site to look like they're doing something so they can get a check and then they disappear. And they being like contractors that aren't really legitimate and aren't really ready to do the work.
yeah. Have you ever had to help somebody who was like ripped off by a contractor?
Every one of those.
Every one of those. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
everyone. More than I can count at this point.
Right. And so my next question is, what is a red flag that a homeowner should be aware of when they're hiring a contractor to work on their home?
So anytime that you have really low pricing, if you've gotten three bids and one bid is, tens of thousands less than other bids, a lot of times what they're working on in that is they're trying to just get you to give them that deposit because they're not intending to do the work. And so if you've gotten bids for say 75,000 and one bid is for 50,000 and then they get $25,000 deposit, they're not really intending on doing anything anyway. And so they're just trying to make it the old Adam about it's too good to be true often comes into play. So they get a check for $25,000 because they want 50% up front to start. They'll come for a few days, and then usually there's some excuses about something happening, or usually it's some kind of oh my friend needs a ride, or any of the things that they do, and
Mm.
then they disappear. And now they've got $25,000 for like 2 or 3 days of work. So then the client usually ends up going back and hiring the $75,000 contractor to fix it. But unfortunately, now they're down the 25,000 that they started with. And so it creates a tough scenario to be able to land because they're not, they've already lost a substantial amount of money.
And is it hard for them to find the person that initially, like, I guess, stole the
There's
money?
really very little you can do about it, unfortunately.
Mm, wow.
It's a civil matter. The police won't really step in for much of anything. If you don't have a contract signed and you don't have a company name, it's a very, very underlying problem, and it's something that's very common, and we see a lot of. And it's sad, but it people just kind of they grab that low hanging fruit, thinking they're gonna flip a house and make a whole bunch of money, and they unfortunately write that check, and then the money disappears, and then they end up chasing. You can chase someone around, but I mean nowadays we have phones that you can buy, and they just throw the phone away basically. They don't. You can call someone's phone all day long, but once they close the line, there's nothing you can do about it.
You can't find them. Wow.
Yeah,
Or so that's probably one of the most common mistakes, right? That a homeowner or anybody who owns a property makes. They try to maybe get like cheaper work, hire
yeah.
somebody that can do the work for less, and then it ends up maybe costing them more money.
It does almost every time. And then anything with high pressure sales tactics are always a red flag. And anytime there's no online presence, if you Google a company, and you don't have anything, like there's no website, there's no Facebook page, there's no nothing, and you're just basically writing a check to a person, then it's a real big red flag because it's just telling you that they're not really a company, they're just a person that's running around. And then because of that, there's no backup if something happens. They're out the door.
I know they always talk about it like on the news, like after hurricanes and storms, they're always out.
It
And
brings out the worst. The hurricane where I started my career is actually a hurricane, and it brings out the worst in this because people get very desperate because their roof is torn off or there's damage to their home, which you and I have talked about behind the scenes before,
hmm
and it makes people just, oh, I want to get the first person that can try to fix this, and so it becomes very easy. Oh, the insurance is going to pay for it anyway. Let me write a check for $20,000, and the insurance isn't going to pay for that person that's not licensed, and B, a lot of times there's people that just literally travel the country basically stealing from these people. The police are getting a little smarter about it. They will often lock out, like I think when Naples got hit last time, they had closed off the beach, so you couldn't get over to that part of the
area.
state. And then,
hmm
yeah, they basically lock them out of the area. But they can only do that for so long. And once the people are coming in trying to, get their work done, then they can still sneak in there eventually. So it's a very challenging problem. But if you're educated about it, it's something that you can learn what the red flags are and hopefully protect yourself and your finances.
Mm, yeah, in your house. What is something that most people underestimate, like doing in a home renovation? Like, what's something that could be like really expensive that people a lot of times or may overlook and not think about?
I mean, bathrooms can really open up a can of worms because you've got a lot of things going on in a bathroom.
hmm
A bedroom is a very simple room from where I stand. It's got some outlets and a fan and some drywall and a couple of windows. But when you get into bathrooms, I know a lot of people personally and professionally who have gotten into bathroom renovations and just realized that not only did the bathroom need renovating, but the systems needed renovating. So the pipes and the wiring and it's a very integral part of a home, but it's also can be a very expensive part of the home, and it can definitely be a can of worms area. A bedroom typically isn't gonna be a can of worms, and of course, kitchens are the same as bathrooms. I think
hmm
bathrooms are even worse. I think kitchens are mostly cabinets and a couple of systems, but bathrooms I've seen a lot of people tear into a bathroom thinking they're going to do a bathroom renovation for 10,000 and it turns into 40,000 like very quickly.
Yeah, like that bathroom that I showed you that they just kept patching over the wall and the pipes, and the pipe was like all different styles, all different colors, and it looked horrible. But nobody ever took it back until there was like a leak and they tried to make a double sink out of one.
Yeah, we unearthed, actually we were working in the house today and there was a drain that was never even connected. It was just draining into the ground. It was
Oh,
draining to the pipe, but it wasn't actually glued in. It was just sitting in the ground. So it worked as it was, but it really wasn't done properly at all.
wow, they got lucky because that could have been a huge mess.
Yeah,
They got lucky
absolutely.
for the time. And then how important are permits, like getting
Permits,
permits done?
well, a couple things with permits. One is there's a big misconception about cost of permits. Permitting, and this is one of the things that the fly-by-night people will say is, oh, we're not going to pull permits. It'll just cost you a whole bunch of money. It's not, it's going to be expensive and this and that. First of all, most permits are a few $100s. They're
Okay.
not, they're not expensive. They're not as costly as you would think that they would be. Um, if you don't pull a permit, the only person you're going to hurt is the homeowner. It never hurts the contractor to pull a permit. It only hurts the homeowner because if things aren't done properly, it's always going to fall on the homeowner and who owns the property. It's
hmm
never going to fall on the contractor. The contractors that don't want to pull permits, it's because either they can't pull permits or they're trying to shortcut things. It's just there's never a scenario where as a homeowner you purposely don't want to pull permits. For instance, if you put a new air conditioning system in a home or a new water heater, that's actually something you're supposed to get a permit on. A lot of people kind of give me wide eyes when I say that, but an air conditioning system is supposed to be permitted. A new condenser, a new air handler. So a water heater is supposed to be permitted. Um, the effects of this can be, of course, worst effects could be a fire or a flood. Somebody doesn't put something in right, it leaks, it catches on fire, etc. For instance, if you put a big water heater in an old home and it's not properly wired for that, a few weeks or a few months could go by and that water heater and the wiring could catch on fire, or it could flood the house. I mean, there's just a lot of things that can happen. And then if that does happen, the secondary effect is that your insurance company is not going to cover it because now you were unlicensed and didn't do what you were supposed to do. I always say that it's a lot like giving the keys to your car to an unlicensed driver. If you gave your car keys to an unlicensed driver and they go hit a tree, you can't run to your insurance company and say, "Hey, I want a new car." They're going to say, "No, you didn't. You're not the licensed driver. You weren't the person that was supposed to be driving it." And so, good luck. And the same thing happens in homes.
Right. They try to cut corners. And then inspections, it's never smart, right, to purchase any property and not have an inspection
Never.
beforehand. Like going back to the fire in the attic, maybe they would have been able to see that if they did a full home inspection.
Right. If you've got a home seller actually, I know of a home right now that's for sale that their part of the request of the sale is that there's a no inspection period sale. So they want a cash sale with no inspection,
Hmm.
which from a real estate side, there's ways around. But if somebody's trying to get you to not inspect it, it's because they're obviously hiding something. And even as a professional, I highly recommend home inspectors on any purchase you do, and B, even on some of my own purchases, I've hired home inspectors just because they're looking at things from a little different angle and they can see things that maybe I don't even notice. So home inspectors are great, and even though they point out things, they can be a little bit of the bad guys in some respects, but they're a very important part of the home purchase or process.
Of course, yeah, because they're looking at it like you say in overall, like every point of it. And they can point out things that from an insurance standpoint that they may not agree with, but they can point out hazards or tell them things that may be going on.
Right.
Hmm. Um, have you ever gone into a home that the buyer, or I mean, sorry, the homeowner, the buyer didn't realize that the home had mold and it had mold
Very common.
problems?
Very common. That's actually a little bit of a different one because a regular home inspection doesn't have a mold component to it.
Hmm.
But it can, if there's ever a question, you always want to get a mold inspector. And with all these things, you want to get a third party that's not trying to sell you something. So what you're looking for is a third party mold inspector who's not also the company that's going to be selling you the mold repair. So you don't necessarily want the person that's going to, like, in other words, if a plumber comes and says, "Oh, my water heater is bad, you need a new water heater," he or she is trying to sell you a new water heater
Hmm.
it's a different scenario than a home inspector saying, "Hey, you might need a new water heater here pretty soon." And that gives you a third party who's not getting paid to sell you a water heater. And it's better for you because it gives you somebody that's somewhat honest to give you those answers.
Right. Because my podcast episode released like a couple weeks back. It was with a woman and her family that bought a home in North Florida, and they didn't realize it was like riddled with mold. They actually had to demo the house. It was an older wood frame, like farmhouse, and they
Hmm.
started experiencing like illnesses, sicknesses, and then they had people come in and they said there was no way that they could salvage it, and they had just bought it. And, she's a real estate professional herself too. So she was like, but she said she had people come and inspect it and they said it was okay. So it's an unfortunate situation. But in Florida, there's mold so commonly and pretty much everywhere.
I've heard different statistics. I've heard as much as, and I don't believe it necessarily to be true,
Mhm.
but I've heard as much as 25% of all homes in Florida would fail a mold test.
I kind of agree with that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
because
it
you
could.
think if, or any buildings, and for that matter, because if you sometimes you go in places, you're like you just know like the smell, like that mildewy mold, like
Yeah,
that's the smell.
I have a weird, I get a weird reaction. I get like a really itchy throat, but like a particular itch in my throat. And as soon as I walk in, I feel it. And it doesn't, I can't use it professionally, but it just gives me a heads up that there's something not quite right with the quality of the air of the home. And
Right.
again,
Exactly.
again, you just get a third party to do those tests. And if you're buying a home, and especially, you have any kids that are or family members that have asthma or any of the other, things that make it worse, because some people can just walk in a moldy house and walk out, and they literally don't even react to it.
Right.
But obviously, there's people that have higher, medical needs, and so if I had a family member with any kind of medical condition, I would add a mold inspection to my home purchase process.
Yeah, for sure. Or if anything that had any water leaks, if you ever see any like water spots on the ceiling, there was one, I should send this inspection to you that I got from an insurance company. And like the woman's house is like got water leaks all over. It's just like not maintained, like in the garage. I'm like, how are you not? I mean, your ceiling looks like it's going to fall in any minute on top of your car. And I just wonder how her house is not covered with mold with all those water stains like everywhere. It's just crazy.
It would probably fail a mold test is the
I'm sure it
answer.
would. That's like a major sign
And
right there.
and I've met people that have gotten frustrated with, um, like, oh, I got frustrated with contractors, so I just quit trying to fix it. Like, okay, I guess that's a solution. Or if people, go through any kind of death or divorce where they don't have the person that used to take care of the home is all of a sudden not in the picture. You
Yes.
also, and taking care of a house is not as simple as television makes it out to be. There's things that you have to know and do, and of course, the biggest thing is just have a good vendor to fix it for you. But if you're trying to fix stuff yourself, then it brings on even a new level of knowledge and things that you need.
Right. And that's difficult. What about wiring problems? What would you say is the biggest issue that people try to ignore or band-aid when it comes to electrical issues?
Having a good panel is a big basis, for your whole electrical system. It's really the hub of where your electrical starts and what's protecting your electrical system. If you don't have a good panel, if you have an old panel or a bad panel, like a Federal Pacific or any of the other panels that have been identified over the years as a bad panel, that would be the first thing. It's just such a no-brainer to get rid of that bad panel and at least start there, and then work your way through GFIs and wiring and other things in the home. The other thing that we see a lot of that I touched on earlier is people change and they like upgrade their water heater or they
Mhm.
upgrade their air conditioning, and they don't realize that you've now changed the amperage load for that circuit. So now you've over um, run that circuit. And so when you're doing anything in your home, it's important to have professionals and ask questions as far as, hey, does this draw the same current as my old unit? Is this the same thing? And make sure that you've got good people you can rely on that will tell you the right answers.
Yeah, so you don't wind up with the fire or something in their
And it
electrical
does
pipe.
happen.
Yeah.
I've walked two homes in the past 30 days that have been burned for different reasons.
Oh
There's
yeah, I
more
know.
there's more residential fires nowadays than I think people realize, unless there's like a fire on your street.
Hmm.
Um, I think we've I think we feel like fires are something that happened in the 1800s, and they don't exist anymore. And unfortunately, there's still a substantial amount of homes that catch on fire. Luckily, we have better systems. We have smoke alarms. We have, better alarm
Response
systems.
time.
Our
Hmm.
response times were amazing. One of the firehouses we worked on had three trucks there in like 13 minutes, and it kept the house from being a total loss.
Right.
That we ended up fixing the home up later, so that the neighbors kind of told us all about it. But this stuff still happens. There's nothing other than having quality things done to your home. There's nothing that's stopping. If you put a water heater that's twice as big as your old water heater, there's no special, magical spell that keeps your water heater from, setting your house on fire.
Right. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's not something that can happen. So that's why you can't do these stuff like this on your own.
Right.
Simple
I've
things
seen,
you can do, but not
yeah, I've
that.
seen people like they close in a patio and then they get a bigger air conditioner, and so
Mm,
they want it because they want to cool their patio. and all that makes kind of sense. But now at this point, your new bigger air conditioner is now drawing more current than your old air conditioner. So now you've got a very taxed circuit on your air conditioning system, and it's not going to be immediate. In theory, it's not going to be immediate. It could be just one day that's a really hot day where your air conditioner's having to work extra hard and your wires are really, really hot. And the next thing you know, I mean, they can catch on fire. It happens, quite a bit.
I think, like you said, people don't think about it because me being
Right.
insurance, nobody ever thinks about that. They're always like, I need wind, I need wind. I'm like, that's all they care about. But I'm like, you're forgetting about like the two other major, most common losses are fire and water leaks. Those are like the two that happen like frequently, like daily. Wind and hurricane is only when we have a hurricane coming. So they need to be having insurance all year round, because
All the time.
yeah, things like that can happen.
And these
Um,
losses are a fire, like if your air conditioning in the middle of your house catches on fire, this isn't like you just mop the floors and you go about living your life. Like you're literally out of your home
for a long
for
time.
for months, yeah, until it gets fixed, and it's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these aren't things where somebody just writes a check. I mean, we consistently see this as the professionals on this side of it, that it can be a big deal. It can put somebody out of their house. I know somebody that's still living in an RV from Hurricane Ian.
I bet. Yeah, and that was like in 2022. That was over
Hmm.
2 years ago, at the end of last month was 2 years. So, yeah, people don't inspect and then they don't realize how long stuff can take to get done either. Pulling permits, getting materials, or if they have to come up with the money, may have to wait a little bit
And
to get
houses get
fixed.
sold. Sometimes houses just get sold outright. I mean, family homes get sold because the people just don't have the money to put them back if they're
It's
not
true.
insured, if they're not properly insured for it.
If they're not properly insured, or yeah, exactly. They didn't pay their premiums, keep it up. I don't need this. Yeah. What do you think right now are some trends that you're seeing in home renovations that could cause more headaches later on for people?
I think that barn doors are some of the most, I think they got popular on HGTV. Personally, I think that they're not the greatest door. They don't really seal a room off very well. Um,
Hmm.
they're really bad for toddlers and stuff because the kids will bash their hands because there's no stop points on
Oh.
them. They swing, they're very heavy.
Hmm.
They're kind of dangerous for adults, much less for little kids. And then anything so I'm not a barn door fan, as you can tell by that
Right.
statement. And there's a lot of them. A lot of them will just jump off the track, and they're not a real safe thing. They look cool in a living room if you've got like a double space, like a living room office. But in general, they're not my favorite. I think you're going to see them going away. And then
Hmm.
anything that's too color, too trendy, too right now. I think a lot of people think that they have to do renovations that meet the current what's on television right now. And I think the better thing to do is to renovate your home for what you like in your style. If you like wood cabinets and brass handles, then do wood cabinets and brass handles. You don't really necessarily have to follow trends just because that's what today's market is. It really can just be what you want. I know people that have oak cabinets and granite countertops, and they live in very nice homes, and their kitchen's very nice, and they keep it very clean, and they enjoy the space. And but if you saw it on television, you'd be like, oh, that's so 1990s, and they're like, I don't
Yeah, because
care,
everybody wants the more modern gray, white,
Hmm.
neutral, dark or light shades. But I'm like you, do what you like. Because I like the darker, more traditional type cabinets and stuff like that.
And it's
Hmm.
the first thing we ask people when we meet them for any renovations is, what's your style? What do you like? It's just like when you wear clothes out in public. Like just because something's super popular doesn't mean you can't wear jeans and a blouse or jeans and a shirt. It just means that you're doing what you want, not what the world wants you to do.
Exactly. It's your money in your
Yep.
life. You have to live there.
And yeah, it's your kitchen. I mean, or your especially primary bathrooms. It makes me laugh. I've done a fair number of primary bathrooms for people, and people are like, "Oh, what do you think? Is this gonna, what about this style?" And I'm like, "How many people are gonna see your bathroom, like your primary bathroom? It's your bathroom. You can make it as color trendy or whatever you choose because it's really the only space one of the only spaces in the home that almost no one ever sees ever, except for you. And so you should
Yeah, it's
just make
like
it what you
your
want.
private time. You're in the shower, whatever you're doing
Hmm.
there, you can have whatever color, whatever you want.
And I've done some beautiful bathrooms, and I mean, they would probably, they would, if the home went up on the market and sold or whatever, but it doesn't matter what you do, somebody's always going to come along and have a different idea or a different opinion. I mean, every house that I think we've ever sold has been painted within 2 or 3 years of it selling, just because even a good color, even a color that 20 people like, the 21st person is going to color paint
But
over,
it's true. They all have like they like the house, but they want it different ways because they want to make it their own. So they're going to redo it. That's what I always say. Why do I have to paint all this or do that? The person that buys it's going to come back and redo everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
Unless you have an immediate knowledge that you're going to be moving, you really should just do things your way. If you're going to be there for 3 to 5 years, just do what you like and do it safely and with permits and with the right things.
What's a piece of advice that you can give to a homeowner who's starting a renovation?
Definitely to hire professionals, and to interview not only the professional but interviewing their past clients. The Google, Google helps with this a lot. But if you're meeting with someone in there, you're meeting with someone for a kitchen renovation. You say, "Hey, I want to remodel my kitchen. We want new cabinets. We want new countertops."
Mm,
Um, there's obviously neighborhood forums and Facebook and all the social medias that you can get on. But I think one thing that people miss a lot is they don't ask, "Hey, are you doing a home in my neighborhood right now?" And you say, "Yeah, we're doing a home, 2 miles away. We're putting in a kitchen. They got their countertops last week. We're just about to finish it up." Say, "Hey, do you mind if I call those? I'd like to have a conversation with them." And the reaction of that professional will tell you kind of everything you need to know, but you should still have the conversation where you say, "Hey, my name's Colleen. I'm getting my kitchen done. I'm talking to, this gentleman here. He's looking at doing my kitchen. How are you liking your service? How are you liking, is everything, did the budget come in right? Um, you know, is everything getting done to your liking? Is the job site being kept clean? The did the work, the timing that he promised, did that happen?" All those questions that, and people don't want to have their space invaded, but I've never had anyone not at least have a 2 minute call with someone just to say, "Oh yeah, everything's getting done like we talked about, and the work's being done to my manner." And it's funny how few people do that. How people will take online reviews
yeah,
as gospel and not
true.
check back.
They either do that, the online reviews, or they ask Chat GPT.
Right, right.
Speaking of that, has AI or Chat GPT, does it help you in any ways?
I've used it for a couple of things as far as like creating scope of work and lists and things like that. It's getting there on some of that. Um, but as far as in my world, the biggest technology trend that's helped my world is 3D renderings and
Oh,
3D
wow. Hmm.
visualization. Um, I think so many people are visual, that they really want to see what their kitchen's going to look like or their bathroom's going to look like. So in my career, I've gone from just being able to provide a sample and a drawing, literally like a pencil drawing, all the way till now that we have these 3D renderings, with like flybys. I have a pool vendor that I work with who has like a YouTube video that he provides. So it literally like drones around. It's not it's 3D, but it like drones around the yard and it shows you what your pool and patio is all going to look like when it's done.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
a 2 minute video, and I don't actually know the program he uses, but it's great because you're looking at this yard that's just grass and dirt, and now you can see your pool, you can see your fountain, you can see your spa, you can see the barbecue area, and it just zooms around. So all that stuff is really helpful in envisioning your dream and what you want to do with your yard.
Yeah, that's good. I could see how Chat GPT wouldn't because they're not hands-on. It's
Yeah,
not they're doing the work. So it's easy to ask questions and I think maybe like give pricing or estimates or
yeah, it's good with
wording.
pricing estimate. One of my realtors uses it for pricing out some home inspection reports and stuff. it's pretty close, but there again, it can't tell if the home's really old or really new. So I looked at one report, and the only thing that I thought was really far off was the electrical. And that's just because electrical is such a trade where the work in front of you may not only be the work. In other words, it may also need a panel, or it may also need some wires, holes cut in the walls to run wires
Mhm.
and things like that. So it's coming along, and I definitely think we're going to, it's definitely not going to go away. I think it's going to continue to trend and help things, but probably on the project management side more than the swinging hammer side.
Yeah, exactly. Until they start making little robots that come out here for
Yeah.
us.
Hey, they're the 3D printing homes already.
I know. That's kind of weird. I definitely want to see one of those whenever they
Yeah.
come here to town because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, they 3D printed, well, they 3D printed a gun or something, but they do like arms, like artificial limbs and um cars. They do a lot of crazy stuff. So yeah,
It's
definitely
coming. It's
interesting.
definitely coming. And if you're managing a large multi, I mean, there's a program on the commercial side where when you change things on blueprints, it allows everybody on the job to see what's getting changed. So
Oh,
there's things coming like that. If you're building a large office building and you move an elevator shaft, it tells everybody that the elevator shaft got moved, who moved it, when they moved it. So all that stuff's coming along. But in just remodeling a kitchen, I think the biggest thing that I've seen is just the availability to see what your kitchen's going to look like more than
at the
anything.
end when it's
Yeah.
done to give them more like of a like you said, people like to see what it's going to look like. Pictures aren't enough. They want to see it like where it
Yeah.
looks real
It's that,
life.
yeah,
Hmm.
that 3D render really makes a difference.
Hmm. So, what's the biggest piece of advice that you could give somebody? I know it's hire contractors, vet them, ask questions. Is there anything else that you would tell somebody if they saw this in a house that maybe they should run?
Anytime we see stuff on the surface that's done very poorly historically, we always, if somebody's owned a house for 30 years and everything looks really rough that you can see, then everything is really rough. Like you don't ever find a home where the bushes are overgrown and there's mildew on the sidewalk and all that stuff that you don't also see. The air conditioning's never been serviced, the roof's never been taken care of, the gutters are full. Like it's always an all-encompassing thing. It's so I want to say I've never seen it where somebody takes care of one part of a home but doesn't take care of another part. Usually when you walk up, I can tell a lot literally walking up to a front door. By the time I've gotten to the front door of a home, I can already tell just by cues looking around what the rest of the home is probably going to be like as far as quality of maintenance and things. And you have a home that's been lived in for 30 years by someone who's never done anything to it. It's a lot more costly. It's like buying a high mileage car. You just bought this house that just needs everything. It hasn't been painted in years. It hasn't been pressure cleaned in years. The trees are rubbing on the roof. The pool's surface is, long gone. Everything's cracked and broken and crooked, and the screen doors don't open, and the screens are all ripped, and it's wildly more cost. It costs so much more than a home that's got even just a medium amount of maintenance and things have been done and taken care of. That it's just if you're buying a home or it's so important that it's been taken care of and maintained to some extent, to some degree, not to the degree that some people do, which is great. There's some people their home is immaculate, and that's great if you've got the time and the resources. But just even a medium amount of of repairs and things is super important.
Normal. They need something. That's like that they call a handyman special. It's
Yeah,
everything.
but it
But
can be it can be nowadays with what things cost to do and repair. It can be tens of thousands of dollars. I mean,
yeah.
you can have tens of thousands of dollars to get back to zero just by the time you paint everything, get all the screens fixed. It's nothing to spend 70, 80, $90,000 on a home nowadays.
Yeah, I know. Just for renovations before you actually make a dollar and do all the stuff that you want to do.
Yeah.
It's
And
basic.
you see people that'll buy a home and they're like, oh, I got it $20,000 under value, like I paid, it was worth, I got it for 20,000 under market, and you're like, okay,
Right.
but it needs $80,000. So you could have spent 60,000 more and bought a much nicer home than you bought this home that needs so much that you know,
That you're going to
doing.
have to spend every cent you have to pay the mortgage payment and take care of the repairs and renovations that it needs.
And I've seen a lot of people that think they're gonna spend every weekend for the rest of their life working on their house, and it's not a
Yeah.
reality.
Have
It's
fun. Yeah, you're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
you're not gonna do that,
You're
especially if
not
you
going
have
to have
kids
time.
and
If you have
you have.
kids, a life, another job, you may get to do one thing, and that may be like putting away your laundry or unloading your dishwasher, depending on what you can have time to do.
There's
But
a
not
birthday
be,
there's a birthday party, it seems, every weekend from one of my kids' schools, or
there's
there's always
something.
something going on. You want to
Yeah.
go enjoy your life, you want to go to the beach, you want to go to the parks, you want to do all this stuff. And on television it looks like it happens very fast, so people think that you can do these major renovations in a couple of weekends, and
I know.
it's simply not going to happen.
I'm always like, I wish. I'm like, could you come over to my house and do it? That looks like
They
fun. I can
have
sit,
they have trailers full of vehicles in the background that are waiting to
unload, and they got
waiting to
50
unload and get all
people.
that work done. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a whole crew of people. It's not just like one, like a husband and the wife doing it, like they make it look like. So yeah.
Yeah, very, very common mistake. A lot of times what I see most in new home buyers is they look at a couple of fixer-uppers and then they end up buying a much more modern home or a new construction home because they realize that the 2 weekends that they have to work on it are not going to encompass what that home really needs.
Yeah, which I think makes a lot more sense for their time and their money. But
Mhm.
Elliot, this has been so great. I appreciate all your information. I know this can help a lot of people. How can people get in contact with you if they need an estimate, or they have a renovation that they need, or damage to their home that they need somebody to come and guide them?
Absolutely. We're at vebuildersllc.com. There's a contact page on there, and our phone number is 407-440-8529, and we're also on Facebook.
Okay, so perfect. So we'll tag you on this as well so people can have your contact information.
And we work in Orange and Seminole County only,
Orange and Seminole. Okay, perfect. Just in Orlando area and
just Orlando area. We
Orlando
don't
area.
when we
Good.
buy a helicopter, we'll start working in Tampa and all the
And that's
all the outlying areas.
outlining. Yeah, you got to keep it simple what works for you because this traffic is horrific. So yeah, you can't
Yeah.
go too far. Hmm.
We found that we're much more effective in a little bit smaller, service area, because we do, like today I was at three different of my jobs
Oh
throughout the
wow.
day,
Yeah,
for different reasons. I had to stop by for different things. And obviously if you're trying to cover the larger area you're trying to cover, the less effective and possible that becomes.
you won't make it. Yeah, the road's too crazy and all of that. So plus the
Yeah.
rain. But
Yeah.
thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you soon. Thank you, Elliot.
Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
We're back.
We're back. We had to take a little restroom break, but it's okay.
So what did you make any like New Year's resolutions?
What's so funny? I feel like right now, like the trending thing on Instagram is like an in and out list. So like you make a list of all the things that you're gonna start doing this year and all the things you're gonna let go of and send out essentially.
Nice.
And I've not yet done that, but I love the idea of it. I feel like for me, I feel like I just want to be more positive, like as a person.
Me
Like,
too.
That sounds so bizarre, but it's just you get like caught up in your own like mindset, and I think that's just a part of growing up too. Your perspective of things changes, and it's not so serious. And tap really isn't that big.
It's not that big of a deal. I think like
No.
my son told me, he's like, sometimes you're so negative, and like
To
that really
you, or
to me